There is a particular kind of stillness that belongs to people who are holding something together by force of will alone. You see it in the way they move through a room, not slowly, not quickly, but at a pace that suggests they have already calculated the distance to every exit. You see it in how they hold a pen, the grip slightly too firm, the knuckles pale at the first joint. You see it in what they do not look at, because some things, looked at directly, become harder to carry. This is a story about two people who had each in their own way become very good at not looking. About what happens when the thing they had been refusing to see turns out to be each other. About a contract signed across a table in a glass tower on a Tuesday morning in October, and everything that contract was secretly, underneath its legal language, asking for. About a man who was not what he appeared to be, and a woman who was not what she allowed herself to feel, and a 9-year-old girl who saw through both of them in about 45 seconds, and asked, with the devastating precision of the very young, exactly the right question. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn, on a street where the sycamores had grown wide enough to make the sidewalk uneven. Daniel Mercer had lived there for 4 years. He had painted the kitchen himself, twice, once badly, once better. The second coat was a color called antique white, which was, in practice, the color of old paper, and in certain lights, in the early evening when the sun came in low from the west, the kitchen walls looked almost warm. He was ironing a shirt at 6:40 in the morning when Lily appeared in the doorway in her socks, holding the stuffed rabbit she had carried since age 3, and would carry, he suspected, for the rest of her life regardless of what anyone thought about it. She watched him iron without speaking. This was a thing she did, arrived at the edge of a room and observed it before deciding to enter. He had watched her do it since she was 2 years old, standing at the threshold of a party, or a park, or a classroom, reading the room with a seriousness that would have been funny if it had not also been, in some lights, unbearably familiar. He set the iron down, and she came in and sat at the kitchen table, and he poured her cereal, and she ate it in the particular silence of a child who has something to say and is deciding whether to say it. The rabbit sat on the table beside her bowl, propped against the salt shaker, its one remaining eye facing outward. On the counter beside the stove there were 2 coffee mugs. One was in the dish rack, dry. The other sat beside the stove with the handle turned outward, turned so someone else could pick it up easily. It had sat that way for 3 years. Daniel had never moved it. "You're wearing the blue shirt," Lily said. "I am." "No, honey. You only wear the blue shirt when something important is happening." "Then." He looked at her. She looked back at him with the expression she had inherited, along with her hair and her left-handedness, and her complete inability to be intimidated, from her mother. "We're going to be fine," he said. She nodded once, the way she always nodded. Not in agreement exactly, but in acknowledgement. She had been nodding that way since she was 5. He had learned to read the difference. The lobby of Ashford Biomedical's Midtown Tower was 40 feet high and made, predominantly, of glass. At 8:43 in the morning, the October light came through the south-facing windows at an angle that turned the marble floor the color of shallow water. The receptionist smiled at Daniel with the specific precision of someone who smiles at many people per day and has developed a calibrated warmth for each category of visitor. She assigned him, from the category options available to her, to the category that matched his jacket, his shoes, and the absence of a company badge. He thanked her and sat on the bench she indicated and opened his book. He read. The lobby filled incrementally around him. Couriers, executives, a cluster of men in matching lanyards who moved through the space with the particular confidence of people who bill by the hour. Daniel turned a page. He was not checking the time. He was not watching the elevator banks. He was reading with the unhurried attention of someone who had decided, a long time ago, that waiting was simply a form of being somewhere. From the mezzanine above, Vivian Ashford watched him for 90 seconds before she took the stairs down. She had reviewed his file twice. 41 years old. Single father. Daughter enrolled in the clinical trial pending this agreement. Occupation listed as independent contractor, carpentry, and renovation. No listed employer. No LinkedIn profile. which her assistant had noted as unusual, and which Vivienne had noted as something else, though she could not yet have said what. The file photograph showed a man who looked directly at the camera, with the expression of someone who had agreed to be photographed, but was not going to pretend to enjoy it. In the conference room, he sat across from her, and read the contract from the beginning. Not skimming. Reading. He paused on page 4 and again on page 9. She knew what was on page 4 and page 9. He asked one question, about the indemnity clause, and the question was not confused. It was the question of someone who had already identified the clause's implications and wanted to hear how she framed them. She answered it. He nodded. He signed. He had brought his own pen, a plain black ballpoint, the kind sold in multi-packs at every drugstore in the city. He clicked it closed and put it back in his shirt pocket, and looked up, and for a moment, Vivienne had the disorienting sensation of being looked at by someone who was not, in any register she recognized, performing anything at all. "Thank you," she said, because that was what came next in the script. He said, "How soon can Lily start?" She told him. He thanked her, not warmly but genuinely, and then he stood and picked up his jacket from the back of the chair and left the way he had come in, through the lobby, past the bench where his book still sat, which he picked up on his way out without breaking stride. Vivienne stood at the conference room window for a moment after he had gone and watched him cross the street below, not hurrying, not lingering, the blue shirt visible until he turned the corner, and then she picked up her phone and went back to work. She did not think about him again until the gala. The fundraiser was at the Plaza Hotel on a Thursday in November. The invitations had said black tie, and everyone had complied except for 3 venture capitalists who wore open-collar shirts as a statement, and a documentary filmmaker who wore a blazer over a band t-shirt as a different kind of statement. Vivienne wore a dress the color of dark water, and arrived at 7:15, 15 minutes after the official start, which was the exact window in which arriving was appropriate without being early enough to suggest she had nothing else to do. She scanned the room the way she always did, not for people she liked, but for the configuration of power, who was clustered with whom, which conversations were professional, and which were personal, and which were pretending to be one while being the other. It was a skill she had developed so early and applied so constantly that she no longer experienced it as skill. It was simply how a room looked to her. She saw Daniel Mercer 20 minutes in. He was standing near the bar, holding a glass of water. Not wine, water. She registered this because she was holding water herself, and for the same reason, she held it at every event the night before a board presentation. She needed to be sharp at 7 a.m., and she would not compromise that for a party. The coincidence was not, in itself, remarkable. What was remarkable was what happened 4 minutes later. Senator Hargrove crossed the room. This was the detail that lodged in Vivienne's mind and stayed there, a splinter she could not locate. Hargrove did not cross rooms at events like this. His staff managed his position in a room the way a chess player manages a queen, centrally, deliberately, with maximum visibility and minimum unnecessary movement. People came to Hargrove. This was understood. Vivienne had been to events with Hargrove 11 times, and she had crossed to him 11 times. Hargrove crossed to Daniel Mercer. He touched his arm. He laughed. A real laugh, not the social percussion of a gala, but something that came from somewhere actual, and shortened his face in a way that Vivienne had never seen before. She looked at her guest list. Daniel Mercer, community, partner, +1 declined. She looked back up. Daniel was listening to the senator now, his head tilted at a slight angle, and she thought, he listens the way people listen when they are accustomed to information mattering. Not politely, not performatively, the way someone listens when they intend to use what they hear. She put the thought away. She went to speak to her CFO. The apartment visit was in December, a Thursday, arranged by her communications team as part of the patient advocacy documentation. A camera crew. A producer named Marcus who had a gift for making intrusion feel like hospitality. Vivienne came because the contract required her presence for at least one home visit, and because she had learned, over many years, that the things she was most inclined to delegate were sometimes the things she most needed to see herself. The apartment was small and particular. Everything in it had been chosen or arranged with a care that had nothing to do with aesthetics and everything to do with function and memory. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator held by letter magnets, BLIY, along the lower edge, at child height. A bookshelf in the living room was organized not by size or color, but in a system Vivienne could not decode, which bothered her slightly. On the windowsill, a row of small things. A stone, a folded piece of foil, a plastic dinosaur, a brass button. Not decorative. Collected. Lily sat across from Vivienne at the kitchen table while Marcus set up the lighting, and Daniel made coffee he would not offer to the crew. The girl had the rabbit in her lap and was studying Vivienne with an attention that was not rude but was absolutely unfiltered. "You're on the website," Lily said. "I am," Vivienne said. "You don't smile in any of the photos." "Nah." Vivienne looked at her. The camera crew pretended not to listen. "I'm smiling in the one on the About page," Vivienne said. "That's not a real smile," Lily said, not unkindly. "That's a photo smile. Are you lonely?" The room did not go quiet because it was already quiet. Marcus lowered his clipboard slightly. Vivienne felt the question land somewhere below her sternum in a way that questions rarely landed, because she had spent a significant portion of her adult life making herself the kind of surface that questions did not penetrate. "I keep very busy," she said. Lily nodded with the tolerant gravity of a child who has learned that adults often answer questions by describing the mechanism they use to avoid feeling the answer. She stroked the rabbit's ear and looked out the window. Vivienne did not think about the question again for several days. Then she thought about it quite a lot. The hospital was in February, on a night that had been raining since 4 in the afternoon, the kind of rain that comes in sideways and defeats umbrellas. The pre-treatment evaluation had gone 3 hours long. Lily had been patient for 2 of them, and then she had not been. She sat on the hospital bed in her paper gown, and would not look at the window, and would not lie down, and would not stop turning the hospital wristband around and around on her wrist with the focused intensity of someone trying to generate heat through friction. Daniel sat beside her and did not speak, and did not touch her, and did not try to fix it. He was simply there, physically, completely, in the specific way that has nothing to do with what is said. After a while he began to hum, very quietly, something without a name that resolved and unresolved, and never quite arrived anywhere. It was not a lullaby. It was something older than that, and less certain, and it worked. Vivienne had a board meeting on the 7th floor. She had not known they were in the building. She passed the corridor at 9:45, heading for the elevator, and the door to the room was partly open, and the corridor was dark, and through the gap she could see the specific geometry of a person sitting on a floor, and she stopped. She did not go in. She stood in the corridor and listened to the rain on the window at the end of the hall, and to the almost nothing of the humming from inside the room, and something happened in her chest that she did not have a ready category for, so she filed it under tiredness, and stayed anyway. She went to the vending machine on the 4th floor and bought 2 coffees in paper cups. She brought them back. She did not knock. She sat in the chair just inside the door and put 1 cup on the floor where he could reach it, and the other she held in both hands and drank, and nobody spoke, and Lily eventually slept. At 2 in the morning, Daniel walked her to the elevator. They stood in the fluorescent hum of the corridor, and Vivienne thought, "This light is the color of accountability. It shows everything and flatters nothing." She had stood in corridors like this one many times, after many difficult meetings, and had always found, somewhere in herself, the posture for it. She was finding it now. It was becoming, for the first time in memory, slightly effortful. They talked until the elevator came, and then for a while after it came and went without them. About what it costs to hold things together. About the specific exhaustion of being the person other people organize themselves around. About what it means to be good at something you did not choose and cannot put down. Daniel said none of this directly. Neither did Vivienne. But it was in the corridor with them as plainly as the fluorescent light and the rain. And when she finally stepped into the elevator and the doors closed between them, she stood facing the doors all the way down and did not look at her reflection. The story appeared on a Tuesday morning in a financial gossip outlet that Vivienne read the way she read all financial gossip, skeptically, quickly, and with the specific alertness of someone who knows that where there is smoke, there is, at minimum, a person who benefits from the perception of smoke. The headline framed it as a question, which was the legal way to make an accusation. Was Ashford Biomedical's charity campaign being used? The piece described a mystery man with a deliberately obscured financial background, who had inserted himself into the company's community outreach program. It named no names but included, in the third paragraph, a description of Daniel Mercer that would have been unmistakable to anyone who had met him. The carpenter from Brooklyn, the single father, the man with the paperback. Vivienne read it twice. Then she called Gerald Holt. He answered on the second ring, which was already information. "I've seen it," he said. "Frankly, Vivienne, I think the board needs to discuss." "I'll handle it," she said, and ended the call. She sat at her desk and arranged what she knew. She was good at this, at taking the available evidence and building from it a structure that was stable enough to act on. She had done it in every negotiation, every acquisition, every hire she had made in 12 years of running a company. The structure she built now was this: a man with no verifiable financial history, a sick child requiring expensive treatment, a company with a public charity mandate, and a communications team looking for human interest stories. She had seen this architecture before. Not often, but before. She replayed the lobby, the bench, the paperback, the way he had waited without performing readiness. She had read that as dignity. She looked at it again now, from this new angle, and thought, or practice. People who run a long game know how to be still. People who need something from you learn, first, the specific quality of patience that does not look like need. She called her assistant and said to have the contract reviewed and to pull everything filed under Mercer D. She put her phone face down on the desk. Outside, the city was conducting itself at full volume. She looked at the closed door of her office and felt, for a moment, a feeling she could not name and did not try to. She drove to Brooklyn on a Wednesday afternoon, unannounced. She had not planned to go unannounced, but she had also not planned to call ahead, and the distinction felt important in a way she could not articulate. He answered the door in work clothes, paint on his forearms, a smear of something pale across the back of his left hand. He looked at her and then at the street behind her and then back at her. And he stepped back from the doorway without speaking, which was, she realized, an invitation. She told him what the article had said. She told him what the board was saying. She told him, because she had decided somewhere between the car and his front door, that she was going to tell him the truth, that she had read the article twice, and the second time she had read it, she had looked at what she knew about him and tried to make it fit. He listened the way he listened to everything, completely, without interrupting, without performing patience. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. The apartment was very still. From somewhere upstairs came the muffled sound of a television, and then it stopped, and the stillness came back. "Do you think I've lied to you?" he said. She looked at him. He was holding a coffee mug, not the one from the stove, she noticed, a different one, and his hands were easy around it, and his face was the same face it always was, not defensive, not performing calm, but actually calm, in the way that things are calm when they have reached the bottom of a very long decision. "I don't know," she said. It cost her something to say it. He nodded. He thanked her for coming in person, which was, under the circumstances, a disarming thing to say, and he held the door open with a politeness so genuine that it made her feel worse than if he had shouted at her. She drove back to Manhattan. She was good at steady. She was in the car on the bridge with the river below, testing the truth of this. She could not let it rest. This was a fact about herself that she had long acknowledged and never quite resolved. She could not leave a pattern unresolved. It was the quality that had built her company, and it was the quality that had, over the years, made her difficult to be close to, because people are not patterns and do not behave like patterns and resent being examined as if they might be. She pulled 3 years of board meeting records. She looked at Holt's interventions, not just in this case, but across every case where the board had pushed for disclosure, for distance, for the comfortable maintenance of the status quo. The pattern that emerged was not about Daniel Mercer. It was about Holt, and about information, and about who benefited from uncertainty. She asked her CFO to run a full audit of Ashford Biomedical's silent investors, every entity, every holding company, every fund that had moved money toward them in the past 12 years. Marcus, her CFO, was a man who had delivered bad news to Vivienne on 4 separate occasions and had each time done so in the same posture, standing, not sitting, with his hands visible and his voice level. He came to her office on a Thursday morning, and he was standing. His hands were visible. His voice when he spoke was very level. "There's a holding company," he said. "DM Capital Partners. It's been a shadow backer since our Series B." She looked at him. "The registered director," he said, and put the document on her desk and took a step back. The document was 12 pages. She read the first 2. She read the name of the founding director. She read the date. She read the net asset figure, which was in the second paragraph. She turned her chair slightly to the left, not quite toward the window, not quite away from the screen, just left. Outside, New York was conducting its morning. She turned her chair back. She read the name again, the date again, the figure again. "Thank you, Marcus," she said. He left. She did not move for a while. On her desk beside the document was a coffee she'd had poured 40 minutes ago. She had not touched it. She drove herself. She had a driver on retainer, and she had the car, and she could have either. But she drove herself, which was something she did only when she needed to think without being observed thinking. The FDR drive at 6:15 in the morning was as close to empty as Manhattan ever got. The city not yet at full volume, the river on her right the color of pewter in the flat early light. She had the incorporation filing on the passenger seat. She had printed it at 5:40 in the morning at her apartment, after she had not slept, or had slept in the way that is indistinguishable from lying still with your eyes closed and your mind at full operational capacity. She had read it 3 times. She had not looked at it again after she put it in the car. Carroll Gardens in early morning was a neighborhood that belonged to itself. The sycamores were bare now, March, and their roots had lifted the sidewalk in places into small ridges that she stepped over carefully. The building was the one she had been to once before, the one with the green door and the mailboxes in the vestibule that had names written in different handwritings on small pieces of card. She did not ring. She stood for a moment looking at the door, and then she rang. He answered the intercom. She said her name. There was a pause, not a long one, 2 or 3 seconds, but the kind of pause that contained something, and then the door clicked open. He was in a flannel shirt. He had a coffee mug in his hand, and his feet were bare on the kitchen floor, and the apartment smelled of toast and the specific quiet of a place where a child is still asleep. He saw the document in her hand, and he looked at it, and then he looked at her, and he stepped back from the door, and she came in. She put the document on the kitchen table. She did not say anything. He looked at it on the table for a long moment, and then he set his coffee mug down. Handle turned outward, she noticed, without meaning to notice, and pulled a chair out from the table and sat in it. Not across from the document. Beside it. He looked at the pages, the way you look at something you have been expecting to see for a very long time, and have not decided how to feel about seeing. The kitchen was lit by the morning light coming through the window above the sink, pale and horizontal. The particular quality of early March light that is not yet warm, but is at least honest. It fell across the table, and across the document, and across his hands, which were flat on either side of it, not touching it. Outside, a delivery truck reversed slowly down the street, its alarm beeping at steady intervals. Beep, dot, pause. Beep, die. Pause. Vivienne counted 4 of them. Then the truck stopped and the street went quiet, and Daniel Mercer began at last to talk. He told her about Claire first. He had to tell her about Claire first because nothing else made sense without it. Claire had been ill for 11 months. She had the same autoimmune condition that Lily was now being treated for, the condition that had not, 12 years ago, had a clinical trial, had not had the research infrastructure, had not had, in the language of medicine, a meaningful pathway to intervention. Claire had known this and had not told him how much she knew it, and he had known something was wrong and had not asked with the directness that the situation required because the company was in the middle of an acquisition that year, and the quarter after that was the London expansion, and he had told himself, this was the sentence he said very flatly, without inflection, as if reading something in a foreign language, that he would take the time when there was time. There had not been time. Claire died in April, on a morning he had spent in a conference call, and by the time he understood what had happened, he was standing in a hospital corridor that looked very much, he said, like the one Vivienne had stood in February. And Lily was 6 years old and asleep in a plastic chair with her rabbit under her arm. And the empire he had built was continuing to generate returns on 3 continents, and none of it meant anything at all. He stepped back from it. Not immediately, not all at once. It took 8 months, and a lawyer, and a man named Thomas, who had worked for him for 11 years, and who he trusted completely, and to whom he gave everything to run. He simplified his name. He moved to Brooklyn. He enrolled Lily in school, and learned the school pickup schedule, and learned the names of her teachers, and put her drawings on the refrigerator with letter magnets at child height. And when she was sick, he stayed home, and when she had nightmares, he sat on the floor of her room until they passed, and when she asked about her mother, he answered honestly. He had watched Ashford Biomedical from a distance for years. He had known Claire's condition. After she died, he had followed every research pathway that might have reached a different outcome, the way people follow the routes not taken, obsessively, uselessly, because the knowledge that a road exists does not allow you to travel backward on it. When Vivienne's early research showed real promise, he had invested through DM Capital, first because the research mattered, and later because Lily had been diagnosed, and later still because he had watched Vivienne for long enough to believe that the company she was building was the kind of company that stayed. You could have arranged Lily's enrollment through your lawyers, Vivienne said. Her voice was steady. She was good at steady. You have the resources. You didn't need the contract. No, he said. Then why? Then me. He looked at the document on the table. Then he looked at her. Because I had watched you for 4 years from a safe distance, he said, and I had formed a view of who you were. And I needed to know if that view would survive the version of you that sits across a table from someone who appears to have nothing. The street outside was beginning to wake. A door opened somewhere below and closed again. The delivery truck had gone. A pigeon landed on the windowsill, assessed the situation, and left with the brisk indifference of pigeons everywhere. And, she said. You brought coffee from the vending machine, he said. You didn't have to stay. You stayed for 4 hours. Vivienne looked at the window. The light had shifted, the sun fully up now, the kitchen warmer. She looked at the mug on the table. Handle turned outward. She had noticed it the first day she came here and filed the detail, and had not known what file to put it in. She understood now. Gerald Holt's careful construction collapsed within 48 hours. The outlet retracted. DM Capital's legal team surfaced the documentation that made the retraction not optional but necessary. The board convened an emergency session. Vivienne sat at the head of the table and did not say "I told you so," because she was good at many things, and one of them was knowing which satisfactions to forgo. Holt was given the opportunity to resign, which he took, and the door closed behind him with the specific finality of a door closing on something that had always been temporary. After the board meeting, Vivienne went back to her office and sat in her chair and turned it slightly to the left, and looked at the city for a long time. Then she turned back to her desk and opened her laptop and did not, for a while, type anything. She took a week. She went to London, not for business, which was unusual, but to see her mother, which was more unusual. Her mother lived in Hammersmith in a house she had lived in for 40 years, a house that always smelled of something baking, and where the heating was always slightly too high, and where Vivian had, since childhood, been capable of sleeping deeply in a way she was not capable of anywhere else. She told her mother the outline of it. Her mother listened without interrupting, which was one of her mother's gifts, and then she poured more tea and looked out the kitchen window at the garden, which in March contained mostly mud and the skeletal suggestion of a rose bush. "The question is not whether he lied," her mother said. Vivian waited. "The question is whether the man who sat on that hospital floor was real." Vivian looked at her tea. He was. She had known he was since the corridor. She had known it with the specific certainty of the body, which processes truth faster than the mind, and more honestly, and she had filed that certainty away under reasons to be cautious, and she had been. She was now able to acknowledge, cautious in the manner of someone who has already made a decision and is collecting evidence to complicate it. She slept 10 hours the first night. She walked along the Thames in the mornings, the water gray and wide, and going about its business regardless of everything, the way rivers do. She called her assistant once to check on 2 items, and then did not call again. She bought a book from a shop on King Street, and read it over 2 evenings, and it was a very good book, and she felt turning the last page, a particular and unexpected gratitude for the existence of good books, for all the things that are simply themselves. On the 5th day she called Thomas, who managed Daniel's empire, because she wanted to understand the structure of it. Thomas was, predictably, discreet. He told her what was a matter of public record and nothing beyond it. What was a matter of public record was considerable. She flew back on a Saturday. She went to Brooklyn on a Sunday morning. She had not told him she was coming. She brought a book, a novel Lily had mentioned in the documentary footage, in passing, as something she had been looking for but the library didn't have. Vivian had found it in London, at the shop on King Street. She had not planned to find it. She had simply been looking at the shelves and seen it, and known, in the way you know certain things, that this was the thing she would bring. Lily answered the door. She looked at Vivian. She looked at the book. She looked at Vivian again with an expression that combined surprise and the complete absence of surprise, which was a combination Vivian was beginning to understand as specifically Lily's. She took the book with both hands. Daniel was in the kitchen, making something that involved a great deal of flour. He had it on his forearms and on the front of his shirt and apparently on his left ear, which suggested either remarkable clumsiness or deep preoccupation. He looked at Vivian in the doorway, and then at Lily behind her with the book, and he looked back at Vivian, and he did not smile. Exactly, his face did something that was adjacent to a smile and considerably more than one. "There's coffee," he said. "Good," she said, and came in. They negotiated. Not the contract. The contract had ended the day its terms were fulfilled, and neither of them had any interest in another one. They negotiated the way adults negotiate the things that matter, carefully, directly, without the protection of formal language. She told him that honesty was a non-negotiable baseline. Not absence of secrets. She understood by now that everyone carries something they have not yet found words for. But honesty when asked. Honesty when it costs something. Honesty as a practice rather than a performance. He told her that what he needed was to be seen as himself. Not the portfolio. Not the empire. Not the story the financial press wanted to tell about a reclusive billionaire who had chosen Brooklyn over Manhattan, as if it were an aesthetic preference. Himself, the man who ironed the blue shirt and made something with flour on Sunday mornings, and sat on the floors of hospital rooms, and had loved someone very much, and was still slowly learning to carry that in a way that left room for something else. She looked at him across the kitchen table and thought, these are reasonable terms. She thought, I can work with these terms. She thought quietly, underneath that thought, something that had no business language for it at all. He re-engaged with his empire gradually, on his own terms. The financial press ran a story in April about the reclusive billionaire resurfacing, and he did not read it. Thomas sent him a summary. He read the summary, and sent Thomas 3 questions, and then took Lily to the farmer's market on Atlantic Avenue and bought her a jar of honey shaped like a bear. Ashford Biomedical and DM Capital Partners announced a formal research partnership in May. The press covered it as a business story. It was also other things, but that was between the people involved. Lily's treatment progressed. By summer, she was better enough to be impossible in the specific, wonderful way of a child who has been sick and is now furious at having been sick and intends to make up for lost time. She went to camp in August. She sent Daniel a postcard with a drawing of a horse that was clearly a dog, and the message said, in her looping left-handed print, "Camp is okay, there's a real horse here. I told them about the one I drew. They were polite." He read it on the kitchen counter, under the light above the stove. He read it twice. He pinned it to the refrigerator with the letter magnets, below Lily's name, below the other drawings, in the space where things get kept. The mug with the handle turned outward was still beside the stove. He had not moved it. He was not sure, yet, if that was something he needed to change, or if it was simply part of the apartment, part of the particular shape of the life he had built here, which was a life made of things kept and things released, and the ongoing daily work of knowing which was which. He made his own coffee. He drank it standing at the window, looking at the sycamores. Central Park on a Sunday in September, the light doing what September light does in New York, arriving at a low angle, going golden early, making everything it touches look like the last good version of itself. They had walked from the 72nd Street entrance and gone north without a plan, which was Lily's preferred mode of navigation. She was running ahead on the path, in the way of children who run not because they are going somewhere but because they can. Because the body, briefly well and briefly free, wants to confirm this through motion. She reached a curve in the path and stopped and turned back and shouted something, and the something was, "Come on, Viv!" The name carried across the 30 feet of path between them with perfect clarity in the September air. Daniel did not look at Vivienne. He looked at the path ahead with the careful attention of a man studying the pavement. The corner of his mouth had done something he was controlling with limited success. Vivienne looked at the back of his head. Then she looked at Lily, who was already running again, and she put her hands in her pockets and walked forward. She did not correct her. If this story touched you in any way, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. A like and a subscription would mean a lot and help us continue telling stories like this. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Some things we carry for so long, we forget they have weight. We mistake the ache for ordinary life. We learn to sleep through it, to work through it, to smile in photographs through it, and we call this, quietly, being fine. Daniel and Vivienne were both fine. They were exceptionally, exhaustingly fine. And then a 9-year-old girl with a one-eyed rabbit asked a single honest question, and the word cracked open like a window in a room that had not had air in years. This is what the story is quietly about. Not wealth hidden or identity concealed, but the braver, harder thing, the willingness, after grief has done its work and left its marks, to let someone see you in the kitchen at 11 at night. In the unguarded version, in the version that still turns a mug the wrong way for someone who is no longer there. Grief does not end, but it does not have to be carried alone. That is the only lesson, and it is enough.